Welcome back to our Woman of Courage series. This morning we're going to be telling you the story of Edith Lawrence Cooper. I hope you will enjoy her story as much as I did. I'm going to flip the camera. This is a picture of Edith. I'm not quite sure what age she would have been in this picture. She was born in 1891 on a ranch in the area of Butte, Montana. She had a plan for her life. She decided that she wanted to be a court recorder, so she went to a business college and she graduated at the age of 16. She had already procured a job that she was going to start soon when she became ill with a severe case of the measles. After she had recovered from the measles, she was left deaf, totally deaf, for several months. And eventually her hearing did return, but it was diminished, which caused a problem with her being a court recorder. She would not any longer be able to hear well enough to do what was needed as a recorder. So her life was in a flux at this time. She was dating a boy named Ashley, and he was leaving for college somewhere in the east, and she was just confused at what to do with her life. A salesman came to their home, and in the process of coming, he had some maps that he was showing the family, and she saw on that map a place that stood out to her because her boyfriend's name was Ashley, that there was a town in Utah called Ashley, and she got it into her mind that that would be a good place for her to try to get a job. So she wrote that night to the postmaster of Ashley, asking if there was anyone in town who needed a stenographer, that she would love to work there and be a stenographer. It wasn't very long afterward that she received a letter back that there was the mayor of Vernal. Well, I'm not sure if he was the mayor at that time. He was an attorney in Vernal. His name was O'Donnell, and this is a picture of what he looked like. He was also the mayor of Vernal during his lifetime, and also a senator for the state of Utah. And she worked with him in his office for over 15 years when he talked her into training to become a lawyer. He felt that she would excel in that, and so after that 15 years, the very last 6 of it, she took correspondence courses from a college in Chicago to gain her law degree. He was very busy and had a lot on his table, and she had learned a great deal from him with this extra training. She was able to pass the bar in the state of Utah. I'm trying to find some of the details looking into that. She said it took 6 years to complete the requirements, and her name was added to the firm of O'Donnell and Calder, which was really unusual for a woman's name to be on a law office, that she was a lawyer herself. Soon after she came to Salt Lake, to Salt Lake City to a bar convention, and she registered to go in, and a judge came up to her and said she wasn't entitled to register. Well, they said she wasn't entitled to register, but a judge came up and said that if she wasn't entitled to register, then neither was he. And so she registered, and he personally escorted her into the assembly. At first, there were other objections to the fact that I was a woman, she recalled. Some wouldn't let a woman handle their cases. She did a lot of abstract work and title work for the company, and she worked with a lot of the big oil companies that came into Vernal. And interestingly, there was one anecdote where they talked about how one of the company's heads called and asked for her, and when she said, I'm the lawyer, Miss Lawrence, he was flabbergasted that she was a woman. She had done a lot of work for them in the past, but he had not known that she was a woman. And it was, she asked him, do you want to find a different lawyer? And he said, well, you've done good enough up to this point. Why not just keep you? So there was some opposition to, or I shouldn't say opposition, more resistance to having a woman as a lawyer in those days, because it was such a new thing. In fact, in the later part of her life, she was known to say that she felt she was the longest practicing woman lawyer in the state of Utah. I love that she was able to step forward. I wanted to tell you a little bit about when she decided to come to Vernal. Her parents weren't very excited about it, and one of the things her father said was that there was always a way for her to come home if she wanted to, and expected her to come back. She did not return to Montana after she moved to the Vernal area for 3 years. And when she did, I think what she was going back to do was to see if she could still have a relationship with her old boyfriend, Ashley. And there is one anecdote that it did not work out the way she had envisioned. And so she came back to Vernal, and obviously Vernal was a very good place for her. Back in the early 20s, Vernal was beginning to grow. It was becoming a bustling new settlement area. But it was difficult to have the money to get things done that the men who were industrious in Vernal really wanted to have happen to make this community a better place. And so they began doing what they call bond companies to open new enterprises in Vernal. Banks, new businesses were almost always begun as with bond companies, so that there were people that were buying bonds and helping them to get started. One of the adventures at this time was that they wanted to bring a theater into town. It was a very exciting new thing that was available to the people. They were silent movies at the time. And these men, and Edith actually happened to be on the on the committee or on the board, and she was asked to be the manager of the new theater that was going to be built, and it was called the Vogue. It was state-of-the-art. I love reading the stories about the Vogue. They actually were known to have one of the nicest theaters in the state of Utah, that it was comparable to any theater that was built in the Salt Lake area. They brought in ventilating systems and stages. It was able to hold 425 people. It was used for live plays and also the silent films. They had this organ, and it's housed over at the DUP, that I was able to duplicate 28 instrument sounds. And if you're familiar with the silent movies, there was always a lot of music, and then the silent words would the words would project onto the screen. So the music was tremendously important, and they would always make sure that when the movies came in, that they would contract really good companies, and the good companies would have a piano or an organist who would come and knew just how to amplify the music to make the excitement of the movie. And Edith was in charge of managing this theater, and it was here on Main Street. You'll know where I'm going to put this picture up so that you can kind of see where it was located. Actually, almost exactly across the street from the Vernal Theater. We had 3 theaters before the end of the 50s. There was the Vogue, and right across the street there was the Vernal, and then there was one other one just down the street from the Vernal Theater. So there were 3 theaters, but you can see where the Wells Fargo Bank is today. That's still the same building, and then there were this 2 more sections of that building still there, and the Vogue was right next to that. So she worked hand in hand with several people. In 1929, she married the widower, Rice Cooper. Rice was the town pharmacist, or one of them, but he became, this is what he looked like when he was younger, and then as he got older. And Rice owned the Vernal drugstore, which is in this picture right here. So it was, he owned both, eventually he owned both these buildings. He was a widower of 5 children, the oldest being 16, the youngest 2, and she married him. And together they owned the Vogue Theatre. She was actually the manager of the theater for 20 years. During the time that she managed the theater, she was able to change the movies over from silent movies to become the talkies. She reupholstered all the chairs. She brought in new sound systems. She was very influential in keeping the Vogue Theatre and a vibrant business here in Vernal. She also, there's a story told that in later years, when they decided that the 3 theaters weren't necessary any longer, the Schreiner family bought all 3 theaters or the rights to them, though the building still belonged to the Coopers. And they decided to close the Vogue. At that time, Glenn, her stepson, his father had passed away, decided that it was time to reevaluate, and they went ahead and demolished the theater and remodeled it and made it into the Vernal drugstore. And he tells the story that for a while Edith was upset with him for having agreed to this and getting rid of the Vogue. She had such a dear love for it that when he would walk down the street, if she was coming down the same side of the sidewalk that he was, she would cross over and go on the other side of the street rather than talk to him. But eventually they were able to work out her disappointment. So I think that's really fun that she had not only a law degree and was a lawyer through all those years, but she was also influential in having entertainment in Vernal. Their home was off, it's called, in the article I read, it was called the Old Reader House. I always thought the Old Reader House was out there on 500 West down on 1500. This is the one that's on First South and about 3rd or 4th, but this is where their family lived. This is a picture of Edith when she was in her law office. They said that she had a wonderful sense of humor and that people really enjoyed working with her. She was very capable. She did all kinds of legal work. She did some marriage counseling with in the effort to help people who were talking about divorce. And she did participate in many divorce cases. But she really liked to do the abstract title work. Her husband, Rice, passed away in 1950. After that, she found time for other things. She was a charter member in the Utah Business and Professional Women's Club, a member of the PEO and Congregational Church, and she says she found happiness in Utah. Her career had been very satisfying. My family and friends are wonderful, and I feel very humble and appreciate all I have. So the case of measles and a boy named Ashley were responsible for this young girl, Edith Lawrence, to come to Vernal, where she married Rice Cooper and made an abundantly happy life. I hope you enjoyed our segment today. We'll see you next week.